because when you begin to look at that book, and get myself together. So all of us have to go through all the ways of life. We all have certain characters in us, and we got to get these things out of us to be able to be one with our Father God Allah. Movement stand for the Pacific Grand Principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And the Prophet Noble Drew Ali I'm applying to all loyal, faithful Moors members and the American citizens to help him in his great uplifting acts of uplifting fallen humanity among the Asiatic race and nation. For he hath suffered much and severely in the past through misunderstanding of what the movement is dedicated to. It is the great God Allah alone that guides the destiny of this divine and national movement. I know that all true American citizens are identified by national and national descent name in order to answer and apply to the free national constitution of the Free National Republic of the United States of America. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali is going to help this national government, for without a free national name with the decent flag of your forefathers, there is not a national divine title of the government in which you live. This is from your true and divine Prophet Noble Drew Ali to all Americans and foreign sympathizers. Prophet Noble Drew Ali is the prophet and the professor. At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which we Moorish Americans draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali, amen. First off, I'd like to rise, walking in Jerusalem, just like John, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretcheth forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who said it bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, be still. I'd like to give honor to the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star, talking about none other than our holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I'd like to give honor to Prophet Noble Drew Ali because it was he who reached down into the watery grave of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms, and set me and you back upright on our feet again. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Mosai Garvey, the Maroon Mo. I'd like to give honor to this brother because he had to have pure thoughts in order to pave the way for love. As he said, up, up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. And honor to our charter, and honor to all literature pertaining to Islam in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to give honor to Open Signal for giving me or giving Temple 2 the opportunity to come before our Portland listening audience to talk about the last prophet, Noble Drew Ali. And I'm honored because what Noble Drew Ali tell you, you never heard before. And we've been here since 1913 AD. So that's my subject matter today. We want to talk about honor, and we want to talk about Easter that's coming up. So before I start, you know, we have a chapter in this Moorish Quran that I want to read a verse for, and then I want to talk about it. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because I want to call remembrance to your aid. And it's something that I'm going to tell you today, because I was talking to somebody the other day, teaching them about what I'm getting ready to tell you today, and they say when they was in church, they never heard this particular knowledge. But what I'm getting ready to tell you today, not only have you not heard it in the church, some schools and some temples in the Moorish Science Temple of America, you never heard this either. So I want to start right now. This book that I'm going to read from today is known as the Book of the Seven Seals. Now we know 7 is the number of perfection, and we are all striving to reach perfection, meaning we are striving to become one with God. And the only way we could do that, you got to give up all these things that bring you unrest, misery, and death. So this book right here is known as the Book of the Seven Seals, that's talked about in Revelations. And in Revelation, it says none can open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. And we can see that because the title of the chapter today is Mental Slavery. And Drew Ali said mental slavery, which you now have, needs each and every one of you who think that your conditions can be better. So this is the 18 years. You know, they talked about Jesus when he was 12 years old. And you heard no more about him until he was 33. But the 18 years that's missing in your Holy Bible is in this book of the Seven Seals. Now, before I move on, I want to put this book up. This is the book that we was given back in the 70s. I don't know how many temples now is giving them out this quickly, but all the Grand Sheiks have one. And the title of this book is Love, True Peace, Freedom, and Justice. Noble Drew Ali and the Theologian's Development of the Moorish Science Temple of America. And the reason why Noble Drew Ali had his sheiks to put this book together is because when you begin to talk about this book of the Seven Seals, or when you begin to talk about a book called the Quorum Gospel, or a book called Unto Thee I Grant, they are in this book. And Allah had to send Drew Ali in due time. And he sent Drew Ali in due time to bring us this Moorish Holy Quran, because during that same time, the Rosicrucian Society was coming up with Unto Thee I Grant. And they was coming up with Jesus. And you can't talk about Jesus because Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah in the house of David. Now they got Jesus looking like Charleston Heston and Ricky Nelson. So we want to talk about this today. We want to talk about this because we also want to talk again because we're always talking about Jesus. I mentioned this when I was on the show last. And when we're talking about Jesus and we're talking about the house of David, let's go back first to a brother by the name of Jacqueline. I've been teaching on this lately because it's important. And me talking about Jacqueline, and we talking about Boaz. Because in our literature, it says Boaz by Ruth and Joseph by Mary. So we talking about some things. So if I ask you who was Jacqueline, even those that's in the Masonic order, because you got a lot of brothers that's bluffing that say they Moorish Americans, but they run over there in the Masonic order, the same ones that's with those who crucified Jesus. And ain't no science over there that we don't have. If you want some tools, go to 5 and 6, because Drew Ali gave you that right there. But when we go to this stuff that Drew Ali say, he gonna take the covers off of it. He said, I'm gonna take the covers off of all secret organization. They have a pillar. They have 2 pillars. And these 2 pillars is known as Jacqueline and Boaz. I take it as disrespectful. That's why during this time right now is dealing with Easter. So when you deal with Easter, you're dealing with Palm Sunday, and you're dealing with Ash Wednesday. And you know on Ash Wednesday, they take that ash and put it on top of your forehead as though it were a cross. And we're going to get into that in the temple, or maybe I might get a chance to drop some of that today. But when you begin to talk about Ash Wednesday, or when you begin to talk about Palm Sunday, you got to go back to the Byzantine Empire. You have to go to Jerusalem. And there's a lot of things you have to go to the Catholic Church, because in the Catholic Church, they have something called Casio. And I remember the prince sent me to a Catholic church to learn about Casio, because they was talking about our culture, they was talking about Mexico, and they was talking about how the same X that's in Mexico is the same X that's in Mexium. So history is in play right now. And during this time, because they get ready to have these holy holidays, Moors go through a lot of changes. Because you know we say the foundation of Christianity began in Rome, but in our Moorish Quran, we have Roman numbers. And that is because that's how we think. Because you understand that during the advent of slavery, when you talk about the advent of slavery, we look at it physically, but where they whipped us up at was spiritually. Because the guy that you call King James, see, whenever we read a book, I was teaching on this the other night. Whenever you read a book, before you read the book, the first thing you do is check out who the author of the book is. But now we pick up the Bible and read King James, but I ain't said nothing about him. Because you at least say don't speak radical against the church or any member of any organized group. But when you pick up the Bible and you got King James, you don't even know who King James is. You don't even know the history of King James. But the history of King James, his name is James I of England. And a lot of people call him James Stewart. And what you need to do, because this is your Googling era, you can Google him up. See what relationship he had with his sister. See what relationship he had with his mother. And when you do that, you can start running around talking about I got King James Version. Because anybody that didn't accept this version, he killed them. And one of the things that he wished he had took it out the Bible was they were talking about the 7 churches that was in Asia. And why are they talking about the 7 churches that was in Asia? Because the whole world once was known as Asia. And now you have 2 formulations in the human family. You have Asiatic and you have European. Now let me stop here for a second too, because I'm so happy, because something transpired here at this studio one time. And then when I come in one time, one of the leaders here told me, said, we understand, Lynch-Bey. We understand that different nations of people have different concepts. They see things different. And when they told me that, I fell in love with them. I fell in love with them because that meant that I don't have to try to be like you. I don't have to try to be woven into your concepts and your ideology, because this is the great melting pot. But what we're seeing in this great melting pot of many nationalities, somebody is being woven into somebody else's culture, customs, heritages, and traditions, and it ain't me. It ain't me because we was taught some things. So what I want to do now is share a few things with my Portland listening audience. And what I hope you would do, I hope that you will Google it up, and I hope that you will investigate it. Because man is not what he's told. He's what he knows. And through scientific study and investigation, you be what you know. That's why whenever I talk to most people that I'm trying to give the wisdom that I have to, I say Google it up. I say Google it up because I wish years ago I could Google it up. But when I started studying this, it wasn't no internet. It wasn't no cell phone. So I had to go to the library. So I'm glad I went through the library, so now I didn't get things in a scanty way. I had to labor for my reward. So what I want to do now, because Easter is here, and all of our people, I'm in a conversation about that this morning, all our people telling me that Jesus was dead. And say on the third day, Jesus woke back up. And then when he woke back up, he went out there and started talking to his disciples. And they say he was actually in a tomb. But I want to read this one verse because I'm tired of keep reading the book. It's time to put the book down. Every day somebody keeps talking about, have you read this book? Have you read that book? How many more books you got to read before we get out there and try to do some work? But I want to read something. The title of this chapter is chapter 18. The reason I'm reading from this chapter, and Brother Lynch-Bey, our treasurer, he was in the hospital. Him and his daughter was up there, Shira. And he was saying, Lynch-Bey, I want you to read a chapter out of the Quran to me, and we're going to elaborate on it. And I was so happy that he said that. But the chapter that he wanted to talk about was chapter 18. It's talking about the resurrection of Jesus. So now we're going to get into this resurrection right now, but I'm going to just go to a verse. Because it said in the book of Revelation that when you talk about this seventh seal, that none was able to open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. So let me give you some signs. See, I'm going to give you some signs because I got a little signs today. And I'm not going to give you some signs from a sheep perspective. I'm going to give you a sign from an adapt perspective. Because when you do that, then that means that you just studied this thing. You know, one is a ritual and one is you being it. And I want to talk about this chapter right now. So let me read this. Verse 34, page 29, chapter 18 of the Moorish Holy Quran. And I was always told that when I get the time to read from my Moorish Holy Quran, the first thing I need to do is look at the capture up top, because this capture is going to tell me what this chapter is all about. Just like in the chapter, let me read this. The resurrection of Jesus. Pilate places the Roman seal upon the stone door of the tomb. At midnight, a company of the silent brotherhood marched about the tomb. The soldiers are alarmed. Jesus teaches to the spirits in prison. Early Sunday morning, he arises from the tomb. The soldiers are bribed by the priest to say that the disciples have stolen the body. I see that too a lot on our police force. These brothers know how they carrying us. These sisters know how they carrying us. But because they get a paycheck, they're bribed, to say one thing when they know it was another. So if that's the case, then chapter 17 of this same book, say Jesus taught in India, Africa, and Europe, and in chapter 17, he taught Claudia and Judith on a tower near Rome. So now, if these Europeans that Jesus and taught start living the word of God, and you faking, then who is my brother and who is my sister? Because they got a body of Christ. And we talking about Christ-like. And in the Moorish Science Temple of America, sheik is Christ-like. Because when you become a sheik, you saying that your earth tasks are all done. You saying the things of this world don't have no rule over you. But in truth, this is where the journey began. So let me read this verse. I'm going to read from verse 34. I read it all the time because sometimes, you have to pound it in. You know, chapter 5 talk about the tools are the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. So we have we have an axe and we have a hammer. So today, I'm not going to use my hammer. I bought a sludge hammer. Because some of our people, man, I just seen somewhere I was at earlier. You need a sludge hammer. A hammer just won't do. So I'm going to use a sludge hammer on you mental slavery today. And I want you to listen to this. And it reads on this wise. And then the white robe form trampled on the Roman seal. And then he tore it into shreds. He took the mighty stone in his hand. He took the mighty stone in his hand as though it were a pebble from the brook and cast it to the side. You know, you and I is in a tomb, just like Jesus. See, we talking about this now. Because Jesus was talking about when they put him in a tomb, he probably been dead. But Jesus was talking. He said, they put me in a tomb, and I wrestled with the conquerors of men, and I conquered death. See? So now, how do we conquer death? Because I've been talking all week about an ether plane. When you're talking about Juali or talking about the work, you have to be of a different ether plane, because you won't even be able to understand what's transpiring because you are not on that ether plane, and that's why you don't teach from that plane. So it's talking about a mighty stone that's at the door of Jesus' tomb. And Jesus stood up and said, you know, this big stone that's at the tomb, you just don't look at what I tell you literally. You got to look at it esoterical. You got to look at it literally, or a lot of other ways, symbolically. There's a lot of symbolically. There's a lot of ways that you could look at this lesson. But because we're physical, and because those who taught us is physical. What you mean those who taught you is physical? Well, Drew Ali told the Moorish American. He said these teachings is for our earthly and our divine salvation. But he said there are those who don't have a divine salvation. They just have an earthly salvation. And the reason why they have an earthly salvation is because truth is running around in falsehood's clothing. So now the subject matter today is mental slavery. We actually think, I mean, we know for real that it ain't. We just weak. You see all these brothers, some of them come up with me, and folks been gangsters, folks been thorough, but man, they're going around talking about Jesus was dead, and the spirit. Let me tell you this. In this chapter of ours in the Moorish Holy Quran, because in the Moorish Science Temple, we study Jesus, we study Muhammad, we study Buddha. Moreover, we study Confucius. And in our Quran, when it's talking about Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, it was talking about Abilipadius, the wisest. And he was telling the people, stand still and listen because Jesus is speaking. And Jesus is the Buddha of enlightenment. So once you begin to study God, you become the Buddha of enlightenment. That means that things will start working in your life. Allah going to be talking to you in the spirit. See, you got to try the spirit. You got to test the spirit to see if you're from the same spirit. Everybody is not from the same spirit. And lately, I've been with the same spirit because it's a vibration in it. So when Jesus was in the tomb, what took place was the tomb was his consciousness. Jesus had to overcome some things of the world. Just like that sister on the hopping cord. When Jesus was dealing with that lesson, he was in a tomb. When you're dealing with the flesh, and the flesh control you, when Drew Ali says it's not in flesh, man, it's so bad today. You got brothers that lost their head. They trying to eat some flesh. How you going to eat something to get up and walk? Don't make sense. My mother told us one of the things she promised me that I would never do. And I ain't going to never do it. Because you ain't going to take my head like, I mean, you got everything else from it. Give me something. And that's why our brothers are going through the changes that they're going through today. Because you done that. So that means you're no longer in control. So Jesus is telling us in this chapter that the tomb that he was in was his mental slavery, thing that he overcame. And telling that he think it was so hard to overcome this big old stone that was at the tomb of Jesus. Jesus said he took this mighty stone in his hand as though it were a pebble and cast it to the side. So all these things that we justify, saying it's hard to overcome, we don't want to overcome them. We like that. We know that stone ain't nothing. Jesus showed you that. He said it's a pebble. He said this, what you think is a big and mighty stone is nothing but a pebble. And he said, man, you could take it and cast it aside. How can you do that? The will of man make possible the actions of the Holy Breath. And when the will of Allah and the will of man become one, then the resurrection is a fact. That's just like in our literature. Over here, key 84, it says, when was the head of Satan taken off? And the answer is 1453. 1453 Byzantine. And during this time is when the Moors, because we still in Spain then. See, we wasn't known as Negro, colored, and black then. And I don't really, you be teaching all week and all day, and you tell people that they're not Negro, they're not colored, and they're not black, and soon they come around you. And you've been telling them for 2 and 3 and 4 years, they still talking about we as a black people. And the bad part about it, they're over 65. And when you're over 65, you know that you ain't black. You know that when we went to school, somebody called us black, it was derogatory, and you better know how to rumble. We called that mental slavery. And then, you know, you one of them dudes with the NAACP when Drew Ali first come on, talking about, I don't know what's wrong with him, boss. I don't know what that dude over there, Drew Ali at the Morris Science Temple, telling us that we're not Christian. Well, Drew Ali only did that because the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. And it was the Roman nations that founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. What is the Roman yoke and law? The customs, the culture, the heritages, and the traditions of somebody else. Now let's look at this flag again. I want to look at this flag again because I've been talking about it and you ain't heard too much about it, because you got to understand, those that raised me up, when they joined the Morris Science Temple, this flag right here wasn't even being flown in Morocco. Drew Ali did a master signs. When he went to this government, he said, give me back mine. They thought he was talking about something tangible, but he said, give me back the mind of my people. And he came, he gave us this flag. The same flag that was flying here in the United States when it wasn't even being flown in Morocco. Drew Ali messed something up when he came. He messed things up there in Israel when they came out with the 6-pointed star, talking about that's the Star of David. Now let me show you something else. In Act 6 of our divine constitution and bylaws, let me quote it again, because I looked at them little youngsters on television, Pray for Those Temple in North Carolina today. I was looking at them little youngsters going over their literature, but they can go over this. They'll go over this too. Now you might have sing this rap song. You might have sing that right song. You could sing all these other songs and do all that, but you can't learn Drew Ali's literature. You can't learn it because you know what? That what you love the most is what you learn the most. But Act 6 of our divine constitution and bylaws, it says, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality. Now, he told us this before we start calling ourselves Negro, colored, and black. We ain't start calling ourselves black until 1968 when Martin Luther King got killed. How do I know? Because I was there. I was going to Dunbar High School, so I was a pretty old fella. And everybody that went to Dunbar High School, if you was 17, that means you were 35 because of the things that you seen and the things that you went through in your childhood. But so it says with us. And he gonna tell you ain't black in here. But like I say, we didn't start calling ourselves black until 1968, but you all telling us in 1913 that we will be calling ourselves black in 1968. So here I go. Act 6 of our divine constitution and bylaws. Everybody say, what is the Constitution and what is the bylaw? Act 1 is the Constitution because it's talking about the preamble. It's talking about we the people who form a perfect union, etc., etc. In that, it talks about the Grand Sheik and the chairman, and it talks about the grand body. The grand body ain't the lay members of those who come and go. The grand body is sheiks. So we talking about those who've been tried and true. So let's look at this again. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality. And we're teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. I'm talking about the ancient Moabites. So now we're talking about the ancient Moabites. All you who study the book, study your Bible, you go to a chapter in there called Ruth. So I want you to put a T on Ruth, and you're going to get the truth right now, because it tells you in that chapter that Ruth was a Moabite. But then it tells you about Jesse, tell you about Obed, it tells you about King David, and it tells you about Solomon. All that's right there in the Bible. But it tells you that these brothers and sisters are from Africa. They are descendants of the ancient Moabites. And these are they who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So now we have our flag back. And being that we have our flag back, see, this flag here was the first nation on earth that had a treaty with the United States. You'll hear all of the presidents mention that. But what you fail to realize is those people that's in Morocco today are not descendants of the ancient Moabites. Those people that's in Saudi Arabia today, those people there are not descendants of the ancient Moabites. And you got to understand Ruth. And you have to understand that Abraham had a handmaid named Hagar. They had a child named Ishmael. Ishmael is the father of the Arabian nation. So why they look like that? They got a show here, right here in this studio, that comes on after mine. And the title of this is, you have a couple of Arabs that is Christian ministers. And they come on and talk about Jesus. But that wasn't nothing strange to me, because I was telling the brother that I had a friend in Saudi Arabia that was a Christian. And his name was Yusuf Ali. So he said, man, I don't have anything with, ain't no such thing as a Muslim name. He said, this is an Arabian name. That's the name that I have, because I'm not a Muslim, I'm a Christian. So now you look at the Arabians. When you look at, I posted it recently. When you look at them and Trump be right there with them, you wouldn't be able to tell who was Arabian and who wasn't. As I spoke recently, when Trump was over in Saudi Arabia, all the rest of them had their head covered and Trump didn't. But if Trump had put his head covered, looking just like them, you couldn't tell who was who. Them Europeans, they might have an accent. They took over the whole world through the Berlin Conference, and they still doing it. Each of them different nations took a part of Africa, and they come out with the gold, the silver, the commerce, and everything else they have to come out. And now we're getting ready to have some Easter, and we're going to sing In Your Easter Bonnet with all your frills upon it, and you're going to be the finest present on it. You have a new fit, and you're going to get some new clothes, and you're going to go to church, because they're walking around. Them clothes is falsehood. Falsehood is walking around in truth clothing from that perspective, because truth don't change. When you begin to talk about life and when you begin to talk about death, it's mental. Man is not the body nor the soul. He's a spirit and a part of Allah. And the reason why I couldn't grow, it was hard for me to grow because of my association. Association bring about assimilation. And the reason why you haven't grown and say that you want to grow is because of the people that you still around. You still around Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast all day long. And then you talking about you trying to grow. You cannot grow and elevate because, see, you have to understand when Drew Ali came on the scene, he brought us the Quran, he brought us divine constitution and bylaws, and right here, here's Drew Ali. See, he's not just lifting up the sister. Every time you see a brother that looks at this here and how it looks, he's lifting up the sister on one perspective, and we got to raise up the sister because when you uplift the sister, you uplift the, when you uplift the brother, you uplift the individual. But when you uplift the sister, you uplift the nation because through her womb, humanity comes. So it said, where was the physical part of man formed? It say, in the Garden of Eden. It said, where is the Garden of Eden? In the land of Canaan, in the city of Mecca. So a lot of times I call my mother Mecca. I call my mother Mecca because I was formed in her womb. She was my first teacher. And this is why I give women so much honor. A lot of brothers have problems with women, even in positions. Let me talk about this. Brother, every time I say, man, this sister could be a good grand sheik, or this sister could be man, you never should put a sister in these positions. And you shouldn't put these sisters in the position because, they can't handle their passions and their desires. Man, I did over 30 years in the jungle. Half the brothers can't overpower their power either. I'm looking at you and you supposed to be fasting and you eating meat. So don't be telling me about what the sister can't do because we dealing with the mind through mental slavery, which you now have. I remember my mother. See, my mother had a lot of sisters. And one of my mother's sisters, they formed a church in D.C. called Alapappas. She was born my father was born in 1898, my biological father. But my aunts and them was older than my father. And so if he's born 1898, they're born something else. In my family, you talk about slavery and a lot of other things. So the women at that time, they was firm and they was fortified. I didn't see too many things that they was doing, and they could overcome things that man can't. But in the time of Drew Ali, he had a lot of sisters in a lot of places. Me, if you're qualified for it, you should get it. Because a lot of times, I remember Brother Bo McCoy in Washington, D.C., he was a lot older than me. He passed now. And he went to Dunbar. This was like back in 1962 or 61. And I heard him talking to some other brothers. He said, man, they got the quarterback in the halfback position. They got the halfback running in, and they got the wrong people in the wrong spots. And that's what you see a lot of times today. It's certain brothers and certain sisters is qualified for a certain position, but because you ain't the most popular, you don't get it. You hung up. That's why we're in the position. Man, I'm so hurt. Man, they laughing at us all across the country. You got Moorish Americans. I'm going to talk about this too because we're trying to bring some people up here and do something. I'm going to share something with you because if you're in Chicago anywhere, they want to know who I'm with. I'm with the prophet, and I'm going to explain this to you. Because you have a lot of brothers all the time. They got, I was in a place one time, brother called me for a meeting they had. They had bats flying around, bugs getting all on me, and you have rats running all across us, and we trying to teach, say, the Moorish American prayer. And you might have three or four of them in this room over here, say they're going to save the world, and you got 3 or 4 of them over there talking about they're going to save the world, and we doing everything under the sun, and what world are you saving? From whatever perspective that you're saving. But they asked me something. The brother raised me. His name was Lynch-Bey. He was from Southern Maryland, and he moved to Baltimore. And then it was a sister up there in Chicago, Sister Christina Price Bay. And I used to ask them a lot of different things because everybody that know me know I used to talk to them on the phone straight many years. And I used to ask them things. I didn't have to ask them anything about the Bible because the only way, that's how I survived inside them Jones is because I knew the Bible. And my family put that in me. But all them dudes inside them Jones were 3 or 4 years older than me. Ask them. Most of the ones that was back there in the 70s with me, all them dudes older than me. But I had the prophet in me, but I was growing and trying to elevate. So now, when we begin to look at the Bible, because that's our history. Drew Ali said, from the east comes all light. And though the sun is hanging at high noon, the blind cannot see the light. So from the east comes all light. The Bible is talking about from the east. So if it's talking about from the east, and you talking about James Stewart and all, see James Stewart in there. when I begin to investigate, that's Isabella, Ferdinand, Vespucius, all them chumps was of the same order. And now we running around in gangs and everything else, talking about we're going to save the world, but they laughing at us all across the world because we have a nationality, but we ain't applying it. Brother's telling me today, Lynch-Bey, I heard him talking about it. He said we need to put out to the public that we are citizens of this government. That's why Allah sent Jew Ali here to tell us about citizenship. That's why when you see me flying these flags, I fly them like that. And the reason why I fly them like that, because there's no flag right of the American flag. I learned that when I was in the military. And if you say there's no flag right of the American flag, again, I'd like to say, if you go downtown right now in Portland or wherever you live, and you look up over the businesses and everything, what flag do you see? You see this flag. You see this flag because this is the United States. And this flag is the United States flag. I know I got many whips on my strike. We scientists. Because Jew Ali told us to apply the science that we have to apply so we get a chance to live and teach our babies. You run around here like you're a gangster and you acting crazy. Man, these Europeans will crush you. They're looking at you every day anyway. They got scopes and things that they can look at your house a mile away, 2 or 3 miles away. I know all this stuff because I was in the military. I was in his military. See? So we are blessed. That's why when you see people open up a meeting in the Moorish Science Temple, we say, thank Allah for guiding us and protecting us in our infancy and our ignorance here. Because right now, if somebody else came in here from another country like they're trying to do, if they come up in here, they got us again. We right back in for 400 more years. We're going to be into slavery, and we're going to really go through something. They're going to go and kill me, though. I ain't going for it. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I can't handle being in slavery. I'm trying to get a few of them for you. You know, but that's important. So this flag right here, the red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center, which is a star of Solomon. Solomon is the son of David. And when you begin to talk about the house of David, see, because you know the 23rd Psalm, when it say the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Or the you know, whatever psalm is, and we keep thinking that when they say the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, they talking about Jesus. But what you fail to realize, when David and Solomon wrote the Psalms, Jesus wasn't even born yet. We're talking about the house of David. We're talking about the Akistic records, which is universal mind. So there's been the Egyptian adept way before Jesus even came about. But during the time of the European, they took him. See, because they couldn't understand Jesus. They couldn't understand Mary. They couldn't understand Elizabeth. And we running around just like John the Baptist. John the Baptist and Jesus was cousins. And what took place was they were looking for John the Baptist one time. The European, the Roman nation, the Roman soldiers. They were looking for John, because John was doing the work of God. He go in the marketplace for 7 days and tell the people to repent from their sinful ways and to go back to that state of mind of their forefather, divine and national prince. So the Roman soldiers said, man, we got to get this chump, man. He's trying to wake them dudes up. So we got to get him. You know, say he might, years from there, it might be a Malcolm and it might be a Martin. But right now, it's John that we want. So they went in the temple. Zacharias was in there praying. Zacharias is the father of John the Baptist. So they say, hey, Zach, come here, man. Say, where Jesus at? I mean, where John at? Man, I don't know where John is. Look at, man, you're a part of the Essene Brotherhood, and that's your son. And we know that you know that we know that you know. I just like when Jesus had to flee the Egypt land, when Salome and them took him in, they knew that he knew where they were. So they said, when we come back, Zach, chump, if you don't tell us where John the Baptist is, when we come back, we're going to do you, man. He said, okay, praise God. So they left out, came back a couple of days, said, Zacharias, we back here to see you again. We need to see John. Where's he at? Said, we don't know where he at. They killed that brother right there in the temple. And we ain't going to do nothing. If they kill a brother in the temple in Chicago, we ain't going to do nothing. We're going to just get on our knees and pray, close our eyes, and look for prayer to change things. But prayer gives you wisdom, will, and love for your people. So that's what happened. They came in and they killed Zacharias. They killed Zacharias right there in the temple because he wouldn't tell them where John was. Now, when I think about that, I think about two girls in our history. And two of the girls that's in our history, both of them name is Salome. There was a higher self Salome, and there was a higher self Salome. What I mean by that is because there was a Salome that looked like Ty. And Salome was a sister that was doing a lot of dancing before the king. And she danced before the king one day so good, the king said, little girl, come here. He said, because you dance so good, whatever you want, I give it to you. She didn't know. So she went home and said, Mama, the king told me that whatever I want, because I danced, that he will give it to me. So the mother said, go tell him to give you the head of John the Baptist. So this little innocent girl, that's why I say the higher self, because she was going on her mother's instructions. She didn't know. She cried and dropped her head. She said, I want the head of John the Baptist. And they brought it to her on a platter. But in the church, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the foundation of Christianity. We don't talk about what transpired with us as a people. We don't talk about the whole world being called Asia. We don't talk about none of these things. We done took on just like my mother. My mother, she didn't mean no harm. She was in mental slavery. She told me there was a boogeyman, there was a Santa Claus, and there was an Easter bunny. And I'm still trying to find that Easter bunny that lay eggs. But until we leave that alone and give that back to Caesar, which is a thought pattern that has nothing to do with you and me. You know good and well once somebody die, they're gone. Because man sees the spirit is what actuates and directs the flesh. If I say I'm going out to my car for a minute, I got to think about it, and then I start going towards that way, making it into manifestation. This building that we're in, man had to think about it and then make it into manifestation. We're dealing with the thought. So thought got you in a situation, and it's the thought that's going to get you out of the situation. So we're dealing with thought now. The only way that you can become close to God is in thought. We keep talking about unity, and we can't even unify among yourself and God. Because if you're talking about you want to become in unity with God, you know the first thing you got to do is apply this divine constitution and bylaw. Another thing you have to do is apply this 101 question, because Drew Ali told us that. He said that that I brought you everything that it takes to save a nation, and take it and save yourself. And everybody always hold up this up front and say that when you see this, then that means what you, but also on the back, Drew Ali gave us authority. He said our authority. And he gave every family an authority. So if you say something ain't right over there, if something ain't right over there, you got the authority to go in your house and teach. That's why when the sister came up here from Chicago the other day, the first thing I showed her was our paperwork from the Secretary of State. I did that because we investigate, we do it every day. And you find all these people, these big old charters up and doing all that, you ain't legal. You're not legal. Everybody in your meeting, if you come and see me, if you don't have a dues card, I don't even want you to come around me, because you might be somebody, I don't know who you are. Because every Moorish American here in Temple 2 has a dues card. We pay our per capita tax because Drew Ali said do that. And then if we do that, we might be able to help somebody that's in need. But see, a lot of times you find these dudes running to the Moorish Zion Temple, just like our brother Navi. Man, he help a brother get a car. He help a brother do everything. And the brother don't even pay the man back. Don't even do none of that stuff. A lot of these people ain't with the prophet. You can tell somebody with the prophet by their word, their works, and their deeds. You know, the European put you out, and you ain't living with them no more. Now you going to run over here to the Moorish Zion Temple, then you get yourself, I ain't going to happen no more. We got to protect and defend all the prophet's possessions. This thing is real serious. And the only way that I could be successful in my life is to follow the prophet. Follow the prophet to a destiny which is not uncertain nor unknown. Now again, everybody asks about this 7. You know, they talk about the 7 golden candlesticks, the book of the 7 seals, the 7 planes of life. There's so much in the seven, and every, the seven golden cat. And then you got seven colors. I remember Brother Tyrone Gray-Hill. Tyrone Gray-Hill got a video out. I just gave the last one to the Mo. And in that, it talks about the seven. It talks about what the seven do. And that was a blessing. I used to get them and pass them out because I want you to learn about the seven, because seven is what we're striving to be. Now, after seven, what do you have? You have 8. Once you become 7 and start, then you can rise up to 8. That's why when you talk about the 12-step ladder, it say once you get to the 12-step ladder, this is when life begins to start dealing with perfected man. So once you get on top of the 12-step ladder, it ain't never over. Long as you're on this plane of things made manifest, you can be growing. Now, I have a cousin out of Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, Crump family. And she went to my mother's funeral. And she wrote something on my mother's obituary. And she said, if you ever want to see Aunt Mimi again, you better get close to God. So a lot of us don't realize that if you want to see the spirit of your mother again who lived a moral and clean life, if you want to see the spirit of anybody, man, you might can't see them if you don't give up some things down here, because you're dealing with the murky ethers. If you're dealing with the murky ethers, when the ethers is murky, you can't see. So the reason why we need to overcome these things down here, things of the world, just like it said in that same chapter, in 17, it talks about Jesus walking on water. But in the book here, it talks about the watery grave. So when you stop doing these things of the world, so I ain't talking about no weak stuff. I'm talking about some strong stuff. What I mean by that is, I was in a meeting with the Mo the other day, the brother, not the Mo, the brother the other day, and we went to a place. This brother ain't drank no liquor in 20 years. But he got up and said, my name is John Blow, and I'm an alcoholic. I said, man, that don't make sense to me. Them people got you mental slavery, got you think that you might backslide. You've been off 20 years, and you stand up telling me I'm an alcoholic. You ain't no alcoholic, man. You can gave that up. Because if I ever say that I'm going to stop doing something, I'm going to stop. But I ain't going to never say I'm stopping. I ain't never been no AA and I ain't never been to none of that stuff. Because I knew that it wouldn't be no benefit to me. Because if I want to stop something, I just stop. The will of man make possible the actions of the Holy Breath. And when the will of Allah, see, we're talking about Allah's will. See, we're talking about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We're talking about some highest principles known to man. This is what makes you a Muslim. Not how many times you lay down and bump your head on some ground. This ain't what makes you a Muslim. What makes you a Muslim is living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You're taking care of your family. You're taking care of your household. You're trying to live a moral and clean life. You're not doing things that's diametrically opposed to what God say do. And this is what's needed in the Moorstein Temple. I supposed to be going to, bro want me to come over to the gangsters ball. I'm not going to the gangsters ball. Because if I go to the gangster ball, I'm going to have on my fez. Because when Jesus went to that party and went down to the basement, he had his flashlight in his hand. But a lot of times we go places and we don't have the flashlight in our hand, and that means that we don't have no light. So, man, I'm always honored to be able to come before our Portland listening audience to talk to you about the last prophet in these days and time. We don't want to see him as no prophet, but when I checked his record and checked what he bought us, checked how he hooked us back up with the family of nations, then I said, he is come again. So Drew Ali is our brother man who just come to show the way to Allah. He is our spiritual brother. Our spiritual father is the great God Allah, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So I'm always honored to be able to come before our Portland listening audience to talk to you about Drew Ali, my main man. So at this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which we draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali, Amen. Drew Ali came for me. He had me on his mind. And I'm so glad he came for me. I'm so glad he came for me. And I'm so glad he came for me. I'm so glad he came for me. Drew Wally prayed for me. He had me on his mind. And I'm so glad he prayed for me. 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 Drew Wally set me free. He had me on his mind. And I'm so glad he set me free. I'm so glad he set me free. And I'm so glad he set me free. And I'm so glad he set me free. Praise Allah and honor to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of our address, the Moorish Science Temple of America. Wade in the water, wade in the water, Muslim, wade in the water. Drew Ali done trouble.